Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read Magic Tree House number 17, Tonight on the Titanic, S5, 5033 by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 1, A New Mission. Jack opened his eyes. It was a stormy night. The rain tapped hard on his window pane. "Do you hear what the rain is saying?" said the voice. Jack turned on his lamp, and he stood in his doorway. She wore her rain poncho over her pajama and held a flashlight. "It's saying, 'Come now,'" she said. "You're nuts," said Jack. "Listen, just listen," said Annie. Jack listened. The rain did seem to be tapping out. "Come now, come now." "We have to go to the treehouse," said Annie. "Something important is about to happen." "Now?" said Jack. Jack didn't want to leave his warm, cozy room, but he had a feeling Annie was right. Something important was about to happen. "You coming?" she said. Yeah, he said. He climbed out of bed. "Just put on your rain poncho," said Annie. Jack threw his rain poncho over his pajama. He pulled on his sneakers and grabbed his backpack. "Don't forget your master librarian card," said Annie. "I have mine with me." Jack put the card with the glowing letters ML on it into his backpack. "I am ready," he said. Jack and Annie went quietly down the stairs. Then they slipped out the door into the chilly, damp night. The storm had eased up. Rain fell gently as they ran up the street. The wet ground glistened in the beam of the flashlight. They headed into the Frog Creek woods. Wind blew through the trees, shaking water to the ground. Jack shivered. He wiped the raindrops off his glasses. "Brr," said Annie. "I'm cold." "Me too," said Jack. As they kept walking, Annie pointed the flashlight up into the trees. "There it is," she said. Her light had found the treehouse. "Morgan," Jack called. There was no answer. "I wonder what is wrong," said Annie. "I was sure she'd be here." Let's go up and see," said Jack. Annie grabbed the rope ladder and started climbing. Jack followed. Rain dripped from the trees onto his poncho. They climbed into the treehouse. Annie shined a light into each corner. The first three corners were empty. Then the flashlight beam hit the fourth. Jack and Annie gasped with surprise. Sitting in the corner was a small dog. He looked like a terrier puppy. He had a scruffy light brown fur. He stared sadly at Jack and Annie. "Oh," whispered Annie. "Where did you come from?" said Jack, and he patted the dog's head. He wagged his tail. "He's so cute," she said. "He looks like a little teddy bear." "Hi, Teddy." Teddy was actually a good name for him, Jack thought. "Where did you come from, Teddy?" he asked. The little dog whimpered. "Don't be sad," said Annie. "Everything is okay. How did he get up here?" Jack asked. "I don't know, but I bet Morgan has something to do with it," said Annie. Jack's gaze fell on a piece of paper lying on the floor. "I think you're right," he said. He picked up the paper. On it was fancy writing that said, "This little dog is under a spell and needs your help. To free him, you must be given four special things. A gift from a ship lost at sea, a gift from the prairie blue, a gift from a forest far away, a gift from a kangaroo. Be wise, be brave, be careful, Morgan. P.S. Your master librarian cars won't help on this mission. Just be yourselves, and all will be well. What kind of spell do you think Teddy is under? Said Annie. Who knows? Said Jack. Poor thing, said Annie. She patted the dog's head. He licked her hand. It looks like we have to take 4 trips, said Jack. Teddy trotted over to a book. He pushed it with his nose. Look, said Annie, I bet that'll take us on the first trip. She picked up the book that the little dog had chosen. Good job, Teddy, she said. The title of the book was The Unsinkable Ship. Well, at least that's good, said Jack. The ship won't sink even if it is lost. Ready? Teddy asked Annie. Arf, arf, he answered. Jack pointed at the cover of the book. I wish we could go there, he said. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still, absolutely still. Chapter 2 The Unsinkable Ship. Arf, arf! Jack opened his eyes. He shivered. Wherever they were now, it was cold, very cold. Teddy barked again. Shh, said Jack, and he shined the flashlight on her clothes. Wow, we are dressed like old-fashioned kids, she said. Instead of pajamas and a poncho, she wore a sailor dress and a long wool cloak. Jack had on an overcoat and knee-length pants with long socks. His backpack had turned to leather. He also had on a shirt and tie. Where are we? He wondered aloud. Jack and Annie looked out the window. The moonlit sky glittered with stars. There was a soft wind and the sound of water lapping. The treehouse seemed to be resting on a wooden deck between 2 giant columns. Jack looked up and saw smoke coming out of the columns. We must have landed on the ship between the smokestacks. Jack looked straight ahead and saw a box high in the air, near the front of the ship. That must be the lookout's nest, he said. Jack sat back in the treehouse and opened their book, and he handed him the flashlight. Let's find out where we are, he said. He turned to a picture of a huge ocean liner. By the light of the flashlight, he read, late at night on April 14, 1912, an English ocean liner was making her first voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. She was going to New York City, carrying 2,200 passengers. The ship was 4 city blocks long. Most people believed the ship was unsinkable. Oh man, we're in 1912, said Jack. He pulled out his notebook and wrote April 14th, 1912. This ship is huge, said Annie. How will we ever find the gift to help free Teddy? You can't go looking for a gift, said Jack. You have to wait until someone gives it to you. Right, said Annie, with a sigh. Well, I guess we just have to be ourselves. Like Morgan said, maybe we'll get lucky. This is hard, said Jack. The little dog whined and whimpered. Don't worry, Teddy, said Annie. We'll free you from your spell. Just then a shout came from the lookout's nest. Iceberg ahead! Jack and Annie turned back to the window, just in time to see a huge iceberg looming out of the sea. The iceberg was dark with a fringe of white at the top, and it was right in front of the ship. Jack felt the jolt. Then he heard a grinding sound. The ship was scraping against a mountain of ice. Arf! Arf! Teddy barked. Shh! Don't be scared, said Annie. She picked the dog up and hugged him. The scraping sound stopped. The ship slid past the iceberg until they lost sight of it. The night was calm again. See? And he said to Teddy, it was just a little bump. The ship is unsinkable. But Jack was worried. Wait, I have to read more about this, he said. Don't read now, Jack, said Annie. It's time to get the gift. Come on, Teddy. She picked up the little dog and the flashlight, and she climbed out the treehouse window. Hey, don't take the flashlight, said Jack, but Annie was gone. Annie, called Jack. He heard a soft yikes, and he stuck her head back in the treehouse. Bad news, she said in a whisper. I think you better see this. Jack threw his stuff into his knapsack. He put it on and climbed out the window. Annie was standing by the ship's railing, holding Teddy. Without a word, she shined the flashlight on a life preserver hanging from the railing. In big black letters were the words RMS Titanic. Chapter 3, SOS, Save Our Ship. Jack stared at the name of the ship. You know what happened to the Titanic, don't you? He said softly. Annie nodded. It hit an iceberg and sank, she said. But I don't get it. I thought this ship was unsinkable. That's what people thought when the Titanic was built, said Jack. But they were wrong. Definitely wrong. Suddenly, steam gushed out of the ship's smokestacks. Then the engines cut off. The Titanic stopped moving. We better go home, said Jack. There's nothing we can do here. We'll have to find another lost ship, a safer one. No, we have to stay and help, said Annie. We can escape in the treehouse anytime we want. But what can we do, said Jack. The ship is going to sink no matter what. We can't change history, and we can't take anyone into our time with us. Yeah, but maybe there's some way we can help, said Annie. How? Said Jack. I don't know, said Annie. Let's look around. Holding Teddy, she disappeared down a small stairway. Jack followed her to a lower level, and he put Teddy down on the deck. The dog snipped the chunks of ice that had fallen off the iceberg. The ship seemed strangely empty. Where is everyone? Annie asked. Maybe they are still asleep, said Jack. They probably don't even know the ship hit something. Annie and Jack started toward the front of the Titanic. Come on, Teddy, said Annie. The little dog scampered after them. They passed around windows of different rooms on the ship. Jack looked through them as they went by. He saw exercise bikes and rowing machines in one room. In another, there were palm trees, bamboo chairs, and tables. Next, they passed a library filled with books. The ship is like a town, said Jack. Near the end of the deck, they peeked through another round window. Inside the little room, a man was wearing earphones. Jack heard a clicking noise as the man tapped the lever on a black box. What's he doing? Whispered Annie. Jack shrugged. Another man stood nearby. He had a white beard and wore a fancy uniform. Send the international call for help, he ordered the man with headphones. Tell all ships close by to come at once. We're sinking. Yes, aye, aye, Captain, said the man. Great, they are calling for help, Annie whispered. Jack shook his head. I don't think help will come, he said. He shined the flashlight on the book and found a picture of the radio operator. He read quietly to Annie. After the Titanic hit the iceberg at 11:40 p.m., the ship's radio operator sent out an SOS. An SOS is the International Distress Signal in Morse code. Unfortunately, the only ship near the Titanic had turned off its radio for the night. All the other ships who received the message were too far away to help. When the Titanic sank around 2:20 a.m., she was all gone. That's terrible, said Annie. I wonder what time it is now, said Jack. I don't know, said Annie. Jack pulled out his notebook and wrote SOS sent out. Titanic sinks at 2:20 a.m. He is leaving, whispered Annie. Hide, whispered Jack. He and Annie moved quickly into the shadows. The captain stepped out onto the deck. Tell the men to start loading the lifeboats now, the captain ordered the deckhand. Yes, captain, the man answered. The captain and the deckhand left. Annie turned to Jack. At least that's good, she whispered. Everyone can get into the lifeboats. I don't think it's good enough, said Jack. He read from the book again. On the Titanic, there were 20 lifeboats. To save all the passengers, the ship needed twice as many. But with all the confusion on board, a number of the lifeboats were not even full when they left the ship. Many third-class passengers did not have a chance to get into any of the lifeboats because they were on the lower decks and didn't know where to go. Jack wrote in his notebook, "Need twice as many lifeboats." "Hey, I know what we can do to help," said Annie. "What?" asked Jack. "We can help someone find the lifeboat," she said. "You're right," said Jack. "With our boat, we can find our way to lower deck." He turned the page to a map of the ship. He and Annie studied it. "We'll start at the grand stairway," said Jack. He traced the path with his finger. "Then we'll go down to the third-class cabins this way." "Good plan," said Annie. Jack looked back through the door. The radio operator was still tapping out his message. Over and over and over. "SOS," whispered Jack. He took a deep breath. "Okay," he said. "Let's go." Chapter 4. Put on your life belts. Jack and Annie slipped through a door off the boat deck. Teddy was at their heels. "Wow, breathe, Annie." "Arf, arf," Teddy barked. They were at the top of the empty grand stairway. It was beautiful. It was made of dark, glossy wood. A huge dome with lights hung above it. At the top of the stairs was a fancy clock. The hands of the clock were at 12:20. "Oh man, it's 20 minutes after midnight," said Jack. "The ship is going down in 2 hours." They hurried down the carpeted steps and into the first-class hallway. Teddy followed along. Jack looked at the map in the book. "These are the state rooms," he said. "This hall will take us to the third-class open deck." "Hey, look," said Annie. "The floor is slanting down." Jack caught his breath. She was right. "That means the front of the ship is already sinking," he said. Just then a man in a white uniform came down the hall. He knocked on the doors. "Put on your life belts at once and come up to the boat deck," he called. Men and women stumbled out of their rooms. They wore elegant robes made of shiny cloth and velvet. "What's going on?" a woman asked. "There's been a little accident," the man in the uniform said cheerfully. "Oh, how silly," said the woman. "It's not silly," said Annie. "Do what he says." "Arf, arf," Teddy barked, as if he agreed with Annie. "Shh, Teddy," said Jack. He picked up the little dog. Then he and Annie hurried down the hall. They crossed the third-class open deck, where more people were standing. These people were not dressed in fancy clothes. They mostly wore plain, dark coats. They didn't seem worried either. They were all joking and laughing. Jack and Annie slipped through the crowd. They went into a big, smoky room. 4 men were playing cards. A woman played the piano. A young couple danced to the music. "Put on your life belt and go up to the boat deck," Annie shouted. The people looked at Annie in surprise. The card player smiled at her. She opened her mouth to yell again, but Jack pulled her out the door. "Come on," he said. "We have to get down to the third-class cabins before it is too late." They hurried down another hall. Then they climbed down another stairway. Jack carried Teddy the whole way. At the bottom of the stairs, they rounded a corner, and they both gasped. The floor was really slanting down here, and water sloshed at the end of the hallway. "The Titanic is sinking," said Jack, "but no one understands," said Annie. I know, said Jack. It made him feel terribly sad. Teddy whined. Jack buried his face in the little dog's fur. Come on, said Annie. She began banging on the cabin doors. The doors swung open. The cabins were all empty. The people from the hallway must be the ones up near the lounge, said Jack. Maybe we should go down to a lower deck. He started to walk back to the stair, but Teddy began barking furiously. What's wrong with him? Said Jack. I don't know, said Annie. Suddenly the dog leaped out of Jack's arms. He charged down the hall. He was running straight toward the water. Watch out, cried Jack. And Annie ran after Teddy. The dog began barking at a closed door. The door opened. A very small boy peeked out. Chapter 5. To William and Lucy, the boy wore a nightshirt. He had red hair and freckles. He looked about 4 years old. He rubbed his eyes sleepily. Then he saw Teddy. Puppy, he said with a huge smile. He threw his arms around the little dog's neck. Teddy licked his face. Come back to bed, William. A voice called from inside the room. Come out, Annie shouted. It's an emergency. A moment later, the door opened wider. A girl in a long white nightgown peeked out. She had red hair and freckles too. She was tall and thin. She looked to be about 12 or 13 years old. Hello, she said. She put her arms around the little boy. I'm Lucy O'Malley. O'Malley. This is my brother William. I'm Annie, said Annie, and this is my brother Jack. Get your parents and tell them to come with us, said Jack. Lucy looked confused. Our parents aren't here. They are in New York, she said. We are on our way to them. Oh, listen, the Titanic has hit an iceberg. We'll take you to a lifeboat. What do you mean? Said Lucy. The ship is sinking, said Annie. Look, she pointed to the water at the end of the hall. Oh, no, cried Lucy. Don't be afraid, said Jack. Just get your coats and your life belt. We don't have much time. Lucy nodded. Then she went back inside the room and came out with the things. Lucy pulled on her coat and her life belt. Annie helped William put his on. Let's go, said Jack. Wait, can Teddy fit in your knapsack? Said Annie. Try, said Jack. Annie slipped the little dog into the leather knapsack on Jack's back. Only Teddy's front paws and head stuck out. Stay there, honey, said Annie. She kissed Teddy on the nose. Jack didn't feel any extra weight in his knapsack. The little dog felt as light as air. Wait, I forgot something, said Lucy. We don't have time, started Jack, but Lucy rushed back into the room. Hurry, shouted Annie when Lucy came out. Jack saw her slip something into her coat pocket. Then she grabbed William's hand. Ready, said Jack. Suddenly he felt freezing water brush against his shoes. He looked down. The green seawater was slowly moving down the hall. Arf, arf, barked Teddy from Jack's pack. Run, cried Annie. The end.